The sex-positive advice offered here may seem brazen to many who have grown up in religiously repressed, sex-negative American culture, as well as most other religion-infused cultures worldwide. Presenting this advice explicitly simply gives accurate, judgment-free information about natural human sexuality, bringing it out of the shadows of misinformation, irrational shame, and endless embarrassment.
Welcome to the Women Beyond Belief podcast. I'm your host, Wendy Marsman. Dr. Karen Garst is the author of the book titled Women Beyond Belief, Discovering Life Without Religion. Karen's book is a collection of personal essays from 22 women from diverse backgrounds who tell their stories of leaving religion. Karen also has a blog, which can be found at faithlessfeminist.com. This podcast episode is the second in a series where Karen records the audio version of her blog articles. In the first section of this episode, she talks about how virginity and sex are viewed in religion. And in the second section, she reads a guest post by Dan Dana, PhD, regarding advice for soon-to-be sexually active young women from a secular humanist perspective. Karen and Dan collaborated on the post after she saw his article on secular sexual advice for young men. Even though Karen admits to not agreeing on all the advice he gives, it is certainly better than the total lack of sexual advice she received growing up. Thanks for listening.
Virginity and sex. There are unlikely any two memes in Christianity that have done more to subordinate women than the issues of virginity and sexual desire. From the story of Eve's bite of fruit in the Garden of Eden to the gospel stories of Jesus' virgin birth, these two issues have been intertwined for 3,000 years to the detriment of women. Today, they manifest themselves in a fight against rational sex education in our schools, refusal to provide birth control under the Obamacare in the Hobby Lobby case, an outright assault on access to abortion, and the abstinence-only movement. Let's see where it all started. The virgin birth in the Gospels. Mark, the earliest gospel around 70 CE, makes no mention of a virgin birth, nor any narrative about the early life of Jesus. Paul's letters, written earlier than Mark, also make no mention of a virgin birth. It is not until the Gospel of Matthew, written between 1 and 2 decades after Mark, that the first reference to a virgin birth occurs. According to Christian doctrine, virginity allows the Holy Spirit to impregnate Mary with God's seed without the intervention of a human father. However, this poses a problem as well. Matthew explains in chapter 1, verse 23, that Jesus' birth fulfills the Old Testament prophecy, quote, "Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son," end quote. However, this citation is based on a mistranslation of Isaiah 7:14. When the Old Testament was translated from Hebrew into Greek, the Septuagint, in the late 2nd century BCE, the word Alma, used in Isaiah 7:14, which means young woman in Hebrew, was translated to the Greek word Parthenos, which means virgin. Today, the Revised Standard Version corrects this mistake and uses young woman in this verse, thus obliterating Matthew's rationale for Jesus' virgin birth. Other religions, other virgin births. There may be a more plausible explanation for Matthew's positing a virgin birth. The author could have added a virgin birth to mimic the other religions that also had virgin mothers for their gods. By the time of the writing of this gospel, the early Christians had moved beyond the Jewish community and were seeking converts from the Gentiles, many of whom were participating in religions with a God born of a virgin. It is notable that the writer of the Gospel, John, around 100 CE, does not focus on a virgin birth. John even refers to Jesus as the son of Joseph in John 1:45 and 6:42. According to Bishop John Shelby Spong, it was as if John, quote, had little use for virgin birth tales, which he may well have regarded as pagan, end quote. Rome's foundation myth of Romulus and Remus contains a birth narrative that their mother, a Vestal virgin, was impregnated by a god, possibly Mars. Mithraism, a popular mystery cult that vied with Christianity, posits that Mithra was born of a virgin. Other examples of virgin births include the Egyptian god Horus, born of Isis, the Persian god Zoroaster, born of Dugdova, Greek Perseus, born of Danae, and Greek Dionysus, born of Semele. Both the latter were impregnated by the god Zeus. Virginity important in patriarchy. Virginity had been an important component of patriarchy for at least 1,000 years before Jesus' birth. The Old Testament is replete with references to this patriarchy. Men were the only priests at the temple, men owned the property, men decided whom they married, men made the laws, etc. In order to assure that the women men married only bore their children, an obsession about the virginity of women arose that has continued to the present. Recently, a young bride gave her pastor father a certificate of virginity. She thus avoided the Old Testament death penalty. Quote, "But if the thing is true, that the tokens of virginity were not found in the young woman, then they shall bring out the young woman to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her to death with stones, because she was wrought folly in Israel by playing the harlot in her father's house. So you shall purge the evil from the midst of you." Deuteronomy 22, verses 20 and 21. The virginity of brides is amplified in the story of Jesus' birth because Mary is not only a virgin who has not known a man, she is a virgin who is not even impregnated by a man, but rather by God. As such, she cannot serve as a role model for any other women who must bear children the old-fashioned way. This depiction of a male God impregnating a virgin human female also is in direct opposition to the veneration of the female as a life giver found symbolized in clay figurines of pregnant females found as far back as the Paleolithic. Virginity is the highest goal for women. Abstinence from sex, which first appeared in the New Testament as a temporary measure because in an apocryphal prediction of the end times, became the ascetic ideal in the 2nd century. Thecla, an aristocratic woman who renounced and arranged marriage, created, quote, "a new ideal of womanhood, that of the consecrated virgin," end quote. While there isn't an acknowledgement that refusing to marry someone may indeed have been a liberating act during the time, what a shame that renouncing sex and becoming a chaste virgin was the only way to be free. In the early church, married Christians were seen as less valuable compared to those who kept themselves pure. John Chrysostom, Archbishop of Constantinople in the late 4th century CE, wrote that, quote, "Virginity is as much superior to marriage as heaven is to earth and as angels are to people," end quote. The celibacy imposed on priests and nuns is in line with virginity as an aesthetic ideal. According to Gregory, Bishop of Nicaea in the late 4th century CE, virginity is, quote, "a purity that cannot be otherwise achieved fully unless one alienates himself entirely from the passions of the flesh," end quote. Bishop Spong sums up the feat of the Church in holding up the Virgin Mary as an impossible model for women. Quote, "Women were made to feel guilty because they were women. Guilty if they menstruated, guilty if they loved a man, guilty if they married, guilty if they had children. There was only one virtuous woman, and she was a virgin mother," end quote. Virginity of Mary serves as a contrast to Eve. One of the first to contrast Eve and the Virgin Mary was Justin Martyr in his Dialogue with Trypho in the 2nd century CE. Quote, "For Eve, who was a virgin and undefiled, having conceived the word of the serpent, brought forth disobedience and death. But the Virgin Mary received faith and joy when the angel Gabriel announced the good tidings to her that the Spirit of the Lord would come upon her and the power of the highest would overshadow her," end quote. In the late 4th century CE, church leader St. Augustine, called the father of the Western Church, spent his life focusing on the cause of original sin. His journey led him to postulate that it was concupiscence or lust at the core of original sin. Since Eve was seen as a temptress of man, she was the origin of the Church's negative portrayal of women. When the Council of Ephesus convened in 431 CE, it approved the title of Theotokos, which means God-bearer, for Mary. She was portrayed as the antithesis to Eve. This antithesis serves to show that sexual desire on the part of women is evil and virginity is the highest ideal. Of course, this is more than a bit hypocritical because men still want to have sex with women. Virgin Mary, images and elevation in status. The second commandment outlaws graven images. However, the early Christian church discovered that it was difficult to instruct people who were illiterate without the use of images. One of the first and most prolific images created was the depiction of the Virgin Mary and Child, which remains a staple in the Roman Catholic Church today. There are even some scholars who believe that women were receptive to this particular image because they identified Mary with the great goddess of previous pagan religions. What is interesting is the elevation in status that the Virgin Mary received over time from the Catholic Church. The first concept was that Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary. The second concept was that Mary was conceived without original sin. This doctrine of the Church, called the Immaculate Conception, is still taught today. This concept came fairly late in the history of Christianity and was declared by the Vatican in 1854 by Pope Pius IX. In 1950, after receiving 8 million signatures on petitions, Pope Pius XII declared that Mary, when her lifely earth was finished, was taken up body and soul into the glories of heaven. Today, this doctrine is known as the Assumption. The Protestants did not carry over this veneration of the Virgin Mary. Indeed, there are some Protestant denominations today that reject the notion of the virgin birth entirely. A poll taken in 1998 asked over 7,000 Protestant clergy if they believed in the virgin birth. The highest percentage of non-believers was 60% among the Methodist preachers polled. Legacy. Some will say that Mary, who was indeed venerated almost as a goddess in the early years of the Church, and later through Christian iconography and church-sanctioned veneration, serves as a positive image of women. But in examining this further, this is only a truncated view of women. A virgin, who is impregnated by the Holy Spirit, only serves as a vessel for God's work. She is not a full woman, and she is only venerated for this one act. She intercedes between people and God. However, quote, she has no power for herself, and the very sources of her power to intercede separate her irrevocably from women. The goddess Ishtar and other goddesses like her had power in their own right, end quote. Yet women today are the mainstay of many churches. They are the ones who organize the teams to provide food for events, who teach Sunday school, who fold the church bulletins, who serve on the church councils where permitted. One has to ask why. Why do women accept a religion that has historically subordinated them, denigrated their sex, raped them at will in battle, and murdered them as witches? My only wish is that women could see religion not as a divine message from God, but as a way for people to control others. As such, religion should also be rejected by men who see women as their equal and do not want to be part of a legacy where they are not. This post is entitled Advice for Soon-to-be Sexually Active Young Women from a Secular Humanist Perspective. This is a guest post written by Dan Dana, PhD, retired president, Mediation Training Institute International. This page supplements the short free ebook, The Reason Revolution, which you can obtain online. Please read it as you consider the following advice. The sex-positive advice offered here may seem brazen, even shockingly explicit, to many who have grown up in religiously repressed, sex-negative American culture, as well as most other religion-infused cultures worldwide. But recognize that young people are, or soon will be, familiar with every topic mentioned here via peer relationships, the internet, social media, and other means, although they may be grossly misinformed by those information sources. Further, non-religious readers will recognize that nothing advised here is unhealthy or unsafe, so long as the precautions listed at the bottom of the page are observed. So, presenting this advice explicitly simply gives accurate, judgment-free information about natural human sexuality, bringing it out of the shadows of misinformation, irrational shame, and endless embarrassment. Being a public document, this article may be read by young women themselves, as well as by parents who want to communicate openly with their soon-to-be sexually active daughters. Both uses are encouraged. Memo to our teenage daughter from Mom and Dad. Subject: sex advice as you begin your life as a sexual adult. We love you, and we want you to have a satisfying, safe, and socially responsible sex life. We don't want you to rely on religion-derived cultural myths about sex, which often incorrectly portray many sexual behaviors as bad or immoral. We offer the following advice from our science-informed, secular humanist perspective. 1. Masturbate as much as you want. Knowing how your body works and how to fulfill your sexual needs will help you communicate your desire to your partner. Some women find that using a vibrator enhances pleasure. These devices may be purchased online, so you don't have to share your activities with us. We respect your privacy. 2. While you may use erotic photos, videos, or stories that appeal to you for stimulation and arousal, remember that most pornography depicts human sexuality in an unrealistic manner and is generally intended for a male audience. Sex is not something you do to another, rather you do with or even do for another. Number 3, feel free to engage in mutual masturbation and intimate fondling with a partner with whom intercourse is not mutually desired or safe. See precautions below. You may suggest this alternative until you are ready to have intercourse. 4. Explore and learn with others what feels good to you and to your partner. There are no inherently bad sexual activities between consenting adults. Include your vibrator or other sex toys in your play. Indulge your curiosity. Experiment. Communicate. 5. Although sexual partners need to be reasonably attractive to each other, don't be drawn to a man solely by his physique or overt sexiness. You will find that other qualities, such as happy disposition, sense of humor, shared interests, emotional awareness, and intelligence, are more important factors in meaningful relationships, especially in the long term. 6. Get comfortable with rejection. A man you find attractive may not reciprocate your feeling, or may have other reasons not to share your interest in connecting. His rejection is not a universal judgment of you, and is not a reason to be angry or resentful toward him. Accept it with understanding and grace. Thank him for his honesty, which may have saved both of you future disappointment and wasted time. Number 7. Feel free to explore any same-sex attraction you may experience toward another young woman of similar age. However, be careful about being seduced, aggressively persuaded, or coerced, especially by someone older. If you discover that you are lesbian, of course you may have made this discovery earlier in your life, celebrate your discovery, be proud of your identity, and explore the unique opportunities available to you that your heterosexual friends will not experience. Understand that one's sexual orientation along the straight, bi, gay continuum is biologically determined, not an unfettered choice. Find your own comfort zone on that spectrum. Number 8. Feel free to explore your kinks, sexual interests beyond vaginal intercourse. Kinks may include oral sex, fellatio and cunnilingus, anal sex, dominant submissive roles, bondage, fetishes, fascination with particular body parts or physical positions, simultaneous multi-person group sex, and other interests that may be regarded as abnormal or wrong by people whose sexuality has been distorted by religious notions about morality that permeate our culture. Exercise caution in putting yourself at risk of physical harm by a partner whom you do not fully trust. Also, feel free to decline to participate in any sexual activity that does not appeal to you. 9. Avoid becoming sexually or romantically involved with a man who is mentally unstable or emotionally vulnerable. Signs of trouble include jealousy, possessiveness, groundless distrust, fault-finding, irrational fearlessness, inappropriate anger, wide mood swings, being easily offended, and male chauvinism that insists that you regularly defer to his preferences. Be aware that you're exhibiting similar behaviors may signal to an emotionally healthy man that you yourself may be a troublesome partner. If you find that a relationship contains more conflict than you are comfortable with, you may choose to respectfully terminate it. A useful phrase for a graceful exit may be, "Sorry, this isn't working for me. I'm not feeling the right chemistry." Number 10, just as you would disapprove of men shaming women about their bodies, you should avoid displaying similar attitudes and behaviors about men. Be respectful of others in your conversations with friends. As secular humanists, we protect the personal dignity and well-being, both physical and emotional, of all people. 11. There is no need to become entrapped in a sexually exclusive relationship with a man unless you are content, at least temporarily, in a monogamous pairing. Exclusivity, having regular sex with only one person, is a negotiable issue. Polyamory, having concurrent sexual relationships with more than one person, is an option you may explore. Develop the skills to communicate about having multiple concurrent partners. Responsible polyamory is an honest, non-possessive, equal rights, mutually desired form of relationship. It is not cheating, deception, or lying to hide your other relationship or ships from a partner who assumes your relationship is sexually exclusive, monogamous. 12. Don't allow sexual or romantic relationships to divert you from your academic and career goals. The special person who happens to be the object of your infatuation today will not be your only opportunity to have meaningful and exciting relationships in the future. Sex for fun is okay. You need not feel obligated to be, nor pretend to be, on partner track. One can fall in love more than once in life. As you mature and the early sexual exploratory phase of your life evolves, you may want to choose a partner with whom to establish a family with children. There's no rush to do so. Wait until your readiness feels clear. When that time comes, ensure that genuine friendship, mutual respect, admiration, joint companionship, not solely sexual attraction, is the primary basis for your partnership bond. Also, don't let desire for financial security distort your judgment of a suitable life partner. Wives of rich husbands whom they do not love are not to be envied. Friendship grows for a lifetime. Sexual infatuation inevitably fades. Remember that polyamory can happily coexist with marriage and parenting as long as your friendship remains intact and honesty prevails over secretiveness in your primary relationship. Women are having children later in life than ever before. Just because some of your friends are walking down the aisle, don't settle for a man who doesn't feel right for you just to join that parade. Be wary of such emotion-driven choices. Divorce and grief await the impatient. Now for some important precautions. Number 1, never have sex unless you are fully willing to do so. You and your partner should talk in advance, before passion overtakes rational thought, about what consent means. Be sure he understands that no means no. Powerful seduction is a red flag. Be wary of drugs or alcohol, as inebriation impairs judgment and can compromise consent. Responsible use of non-addictive recreational drugs and alcohol, which is ubiquitous in American culture, should be reserved for non-first-time sex. We trust you to become informed of the facts and the myths about drugs and alcohol and to protect your health. 2. Sex between an adult 18 or over and underage girls or boys under 18 is illegal and must be avoided. Don't consent to have sex with a man 18 and over if you are under 18, nor consent to sex with an underage person if you are 18 or over. In some states, sex between both underage partners is illegal and punished as statutory rape. Age of consent varies by state statute. 4. Always use birth control and condoms to prevent pregnancy and infection by a sexually transmitted disease, unless that protection is otherwise ensured. Practicing putting a condom on your partner can be a fun way for both of you to learn and to reduce the risk of condom failure. Use of a small amount of water-based personal lubricant is often helpful inside the condom. Be sure the lubricant is near the tip of his penis, not at the base of the condom, or it can cause slippage and leakage of his semen. You both might enjoy the educational sex play of masturbating him to orgasm after placing a condom to test your technique. Check for leaks. As his penis becomes flaccid, tug on the condom to test how easily it slips off. Most condom failures result from this slippage and leakage. Don't assume that your partner knows how to properly use a condom. Learn together. We will help you make an appointment at a clinic when you decide you are ready for birth control pills or devices. 4. Don't do sexting of selfies, and don't allow photographs or video recordings of yourself in sexual situations. Once images are created and shared, they are permanently beyond your control. As your parents, we want you to enjoy your sexuality, an essential ingredient of a happy life. We hope that by reading and following these ideas, you will achieve it.
Thanks for listening to this second episode in the series of audio blogs by Karen Garst. You can read these 2 blog articles as well as numerous other ones on her website at faithlessfeminist.com. This Women Beyond Belief podcast can be heard directly from the website at womenbeyondbelief.com or from iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher. If you would like to assist me in the costs of producing this podcast, please go to the website and click on the page that is titled Contribute. You can contribute through monthly support via Patreon or a one-time donation through PayPal. You do not need a PayPal account also. You can use your credit card. I'm so thankful for everybody who has contributed so far. Esther Nicholson, my younger daughter, has composed and produced the theme music for this podcast. It's exciting to hear how this podcast is reaching so many people and helping women have a voice as women who are beyond belief.